having fun here tonight, huh? Is this better than watching like Mountain Men? So thank God for DVR and the new technology, right? Because we could spend the night talking about American trade, U.S. trade. I'm not going to go through my 10-page report I was going to read because I know everyone here is very tired. But I'm going to go through it quickly. You know, it is a race to the bottom for workers. Whenever whether it's outsourcing to the south or anywhere where corporations try to go around the local labor market, they're basically looking to force a competitive market between the workers. And whenever workers compete, it's just going to make wages and conditions deteriorate. I mean, that's the basic economic thought. And the corporations and people in business understand this concept very well. And it's the basis for basically everything we've witnessed from, the attack on workers' rights, as far as organizing rights, on agency shop, on closed shop agreements, and which put down the outsourcing to the south. And now we're talking about going overseas. What the TPP is, in a simple, I'm going to try to really make it simple, is it's got two major components. And one is an investment, there's two rules. One's an investment rule that basically secures the investment so that, and that's where gives the right to the multinational corporations to actually sue governments to protect their investments, right? So if the government was going to change or something, change a regulation, they could sue and protect that investment and give them that extra level. And then the other part is it gives them the service sector rules, where it gives them access to the service sector of our economy. So basically, it's very enticing. Think about that, right? So it's a safe investment. You get to go to Vietnam, Vietnam, where they pay very low wages and there's really no working conditions there. So you don't have to worry about your investment going down because of it, and you get full access to our service sector, right? So that's like a great business deal. So business really is like, wow, we don't have to pay these workers that well, and it's protected. We can sue the government if they actually try to stop us. So that's the basis of it. And that's going to affect jobs in, especially like for the CWA, the communication workers. We represent call center workers, so we have a direct link to this what's going to happen here, because call centers could be switched over and sent out overseas, and just like that. We actually, CWA's actually got a bill called the U.S. Call Center Bill, which actually gives customers the right to know where they're speaking to. It cuts subsidies for companies that go overseas. It gives the customer the right to request to be back in. I want to talk to someone back in this country, and they would have to do it. This is the type of legislation. It's good legislation. It's good job protecting legislation that we're supporting. And this type of legislation will be out there. Because the viable thing, the connection of the TPP will give the multinational the right to sue and get this knocked down. So this is going to affect manufacturing. Again, we've seen what happened in manufacturing already. There's no reason to go into it. We know what's going to happen here. It's going to be cheaper to pay, like we said, a kid, some 8-year-old in Vietnam to sew a button than it is to pay, a worker here. I look at my children. I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and nothing makes me sicker to my stomach than the idea that we would use the power of our American economy to push the children to work. This is something that we really need to consider. Like, what are we doing here? Are we going to have a country that exploits children? Because we may not see that here, but that's what's going to happen, right? So I look at my children, and the Vietnamese women, moms and dads, they love their children just as much as we do, But it's an economic situation like it was once here, where children have to work. It's inhumane, and it should be thought about. Public sector jobs will be hurt. You know why? Because we're losing revenue. When good jobs go overseas, we lose revenue in our economy, tax revenue that pays for the services that we have. And so the idea that even the public sector is not going to be hurt by something like that, it's going to be. Unemployment is going to be higher. That's a bigger expense on our services. So that also affects some of the tax revenue stuff. Privatizing of services here. This could cause private takeover of public services, multinationals start to come into our, again, you know, one of the things I want to speak about, and it sounds crazy, is you know, the race to the bottom. It's not just an economic race to the bottom, it's also a violent race to the bottom. And it sounds nuts, but in reality, when you look at what happened after NAFTA, and you look at what's going on in Colombia, and you look at what's happening in Vietnam, when you're going to support an oppressive, or Brunei, who has a Sharia law, right? They're a part of this. We're going to actually make a deal, a trade deal, with a country that is forcing women to, you know, into a situation that, you know, they think it's happening here in America. You hear the right wing sometimes say, we're going to have it here in their craziness, but it's actually happening there, right? And, you know, when you empower those type of governments, you know, that kind of power, you're empowering them economically. What do you think they're going to do for those that step up for rights and freedom? What do you think they're going to do? You know how hard it is to organize a union in the United States? Does anyone have any idea how hard it is for workers to organize? Could you imagine what it must be like to try to organize in a place where there's no human rights and where the government can take up arms against you and you have no other recourse? And if you think it doesn't happen, it's happening all across the globe right now. In Colombia especially, there's union activists and union organizers being murdered just for stepping up for workers, doing the exact work that we are engaged here in America. It's something that, you know, we don't tend to think about at times. You know, and even here, do you know what the effect is here? You know that since NAFTA, employees' threats to close shops. Just to give you a little reality here, you know, in 1980, 29% of employers in organizing campaigns used the threat of closing the shop. In the 90s, after NAFTA, it went up to 50%. Currently, we're at 57%. Actual closings went up from 2% to 15%. So this is what is going on, because when employers know what this is all happening all over globally, it's making it harder, and union rights are in decline. They're using these threats right here in America, and that's why it's so hard for us to organize. And so, you know, that's really the race to the bottom, the violent and you know, inhumane race to the bottom that will happen if we don't insist on human rights and labor rights and even environmental rights and all the different perceptions that we have here. If we don't insist that be part of our trade policy, I'd like to think that, you know, if I can control anything in the future and have any influence over anything, it's to make the world better for my children. You know, make the world better for all children and learn from our history, global history and our local history, that we have enormous power, not just militarily, even though that seems to be the way we deal with this, but we have enormous power through our markets. And, you know, we ought to be using that to force countries into treating people properly, treat people good, and bringing up their standard of living and their human rights, not to exploit. So thank you all for coming out today.